Rockfin takes a second. Yeah. Just waiting on Rockfin. Okay. All right. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. We're going to get started off with a special panel tonight. We have a group of activists here that are going to talk about a new direct action event called Camp Dada. So I want to go ahead and introduce everyone, or let you introduce yourself. Let's go ahead and get started with Quaker Socialist.
Hi, everybody. I'm Quaker. I am in the same area as Sabby and happy to be here.
Awesome. Bank Sisters.
Hey, what's up? We're the Bank Sisters. We are some of the organizers with Camp Dada. We have a YouTube channel, and we hang out on RBN with Sabby often.
Cool beans. Phony.
Hey, everyone. I think you all know me from Twitter, but basically I got involved with this Camp Dada movement through Josana, and I'm really excited.
And Lucy.
Hi, my name is Lucy. I have a YouTube channel called Blue Moon Red Wine, and but right now, usually I'm just on Twitter, BMRW Show.
Awesome. So, if you are not speaking right now, can you please mute? I think I got a little bit of background noise. I do want to go ahead and get started now. Bank Sisters shared this clip. Lucy, I think it's you. Can you mute really quick?
Yeah.
All right. So Bank Sisters shared this clip. There was a question that I did ask when Chris Hedges was on about organizing. So I'm going to get started with that. And then I have questions to ask the panel as well. So let me go ahead and share that, because there was something that he said here that I think is important for those of you who are trying to organize, or you've been an organizer before and you find yourself just running into issues such as not getting enough people involved or not getting people to participate. Here's something I want you to hear what he said about organizing. When we were like, yes, we still need to fight for these issues, all of a sudden, because it wasn't attached to a campaign, they didn't like it. They thought it was a bad idea. They didn't want to protest. They didn't want to march, or they say, like, what is a march actually going to do? What has been your experience in reference to that, like direct action? And when you get those kind of comments that come through, like, well, what is a march going to do?
Well, so social media like Twitter is very useful in creating flash mobs. You can get a large number of people, like the Women's March on Washington against Trump. But it's not a good and effective tool for organizing, which is about building personal connections. So I spent a lot of time in Zuccotti Park during Occupy. There you saw people building relationships and building connections quite potently. So social media is effective in terms of getting out a message quickly, It's effective in getting people to gather at a certain point for a one-off, but it's not effective at building movements. Movements are built the old-fashioned way, and they, as we saw, you look at what Chris Smalls did in Staten Island. I mean, how many years did it take him to build that union? I think it's 2 or 3 years. That's what it takes. It's almost person by person, and that's what we have to go back to doing. And if you're sitting alone in front of your screen, not only are you not really doing activism, but you're exactly where the ruling elites want you to be, which is alone in front of your screen.
Okay. Well said. I think I want to get started. We'll start at the top of the panel here. How do you feel about that in reference to organizing? Because I know a lot of us, we've tried to organize with people online, whether it's Twitter, Facebook, whatever platform you're using these days. I feel like, we've constantly run into this issue where, I don't know, when I think about the marches for Medicare for All last year, for example, I felt like it created a lot of noise when we organized via Twitter. Like we had it in over 50 cities. I felt like there was more participation. This time around, I am not seeing that. I've noticed the difference. I don't know if it's just because it's now just one city instead of 50 cities. I don't know. But there isn't as much like buzz around it, and there's not as many people wanting to be involved. So in reference to what Chris Hedges said, should we change the way that we've been organizing? And I'm going to go with you, Quaker, first.
I'm old school. I was trained by old school activists. So we would say, you do 80, 90% old school, and you utilize the tools of the modern, availability to complement what it is. But door knocking and getting the relationships in is really critical. And you can do small projects. It teaches people success. They learn, oh, well, this was possible. I could do that. And then you start doing a few more. So that's what I would say.
Awesome. I want to go ahead and introduce Zainab really quick. Hi, Zainab. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Hi, guys. I'm Zainab Day. I'm a journalist and a leftist, and I'm excited to be on here with the amazing people that I'm organizing with Camp Dada. So, yeah. And thanks for having us on.
Awesome. Keisha and Courtney, what's your take about that in reference to organizing online versus in person?
Well, hello. I'd like to say, first of all, thank you so much for having us. We'd like to remind everyone this is also a fundraiser for Camp Dada. So please donate to our Give Butter campaign.
Scrolling at the
Give
bottom
Butter
there.
Fund. There, right there, scrolling. That's going to help us feed campers and also make sure that everyone is shuttled, and we've got gas, and we've got everyone warm and with supplies. So,
And food, mostly food.
Mainly food. Yes. So that's the first thing. But the thing about the Chris Hedges clip that really stands out to me is I'm of the no school, I guess. I don't like being in organizations. I've tried it before and it always goes sideways. And that was something that I kind of liked about Bernie, was that it was more of a movement of people, and we all kind of agreed to a certain pillar of ideals, but we didn't have to agree on every single topic. And there seemed to be like a forward motion with it. And so for me, sometimes organizations can be a bit stuffy. So for us, this was just a group of people who came together who said, hey, let's try to do something. And so I think also I don't trust anyone. I think that that's the biggest first step, especially after being online or trying other ways of getting involved. We'll talk tonight about different characters that you can encounter, but I think just making that first bond of trust, I don't know if I've ever really had with a left thing. So that's why I'm hoping this.
It's very hard to do that online. I think you do get a sense that you kind of know people online, and obviously all of us met online. But until we started getting into the Zooms and texting and calling in, that's when we really got to know each other better and started to trust each other a lot more. So I think there's a lot to be said for, trying to get, off of, the Twitter politics and into the real world.
Zainab?
When Keisha and Courtney said organizations, So I've been through my fair share of those. And most of the time, it's been a roller coaster, but a lot of them kind of absorb, like I've been on with you, Sabby, and talked about Justice Democrats and brand new Congress and how they kind of got absorbed and turned into no longer organizing and mostly fundraising. So, and we're doing a fundraiser, but doing a fundraiser for people on the ground for an actual on the ground action. And that resonated with me about how, I believe it was Quaker talking about learning and teaching each other within your communities, because I think that's one of the things that's missing, and that we really need to start doing more of. Community gardens. I just went to my aunt's. Her sister was in to help garden. They were talking about other people that were going to come in and help them with the canning, because it was like green bean time, So it's those kinds of things is just one small example of things we can be doing with each other.
Well said. Phony?
Yeah. So, I mean, these past couple years have been really eye-opening for me. Partly due to the pandemic, I began joining actions in the DC area where I live. And so I began witnessing how organizations can, have these ideals, and then, they can go sideways quite easily. And, I realized it's actually really hard to pull off something, successful. And this is why I was kind of excited about Camp Dada, is because we are basically just coming together to brainstorm, and how to do it in a better way. But I've seen the March for Medicare for All. I've seen some of the anti-eviction protests that the People's Party organized in DC. It's just, there's always, you're like, why are they doing this? And then, there's crazy people who show up in person trying to sabotage anything that you're trying to do sometimes. And of course, online, it's a whole another game. So yeah, all of these things, really shaped our ideas for organizing Camp Dada. I hope we can get into some of that.
Lucy?
Yeah, I think probably something that holds people back a little bit from organizing, like the way this Camp Dada started actually was like Josana was getting impatient, and she put a stream together, and she was like, why don't people here why don't they organize? And I think part of it is kind of like the nonprofit industrial complex or whatever has kind of taken over organizing, and then there's people that have activists as some kind of weird professional title, and so people that don't consider themselves activists, they don't know what to do, and there's all of these people that seem to be leading the way. And I was honestly kind of like that. I didn't really think of myself as an activist. I still don't really, and I have had weird brushes against organizations, or I'll go somewhere, or I'll even go to a protest, and then after it's over, I'll go home, and I'm like, well, that was interesting, but then there isn't that much continued engagement, I guess you would say. So then when we started brainstorming this, I started to learn a lot about, how to put something together, how much work it takes, how to sustain that kind of continued engagement, and then get other people to carry on the work when you can't do it anymore, stuff like that.
Right. There has to be a lot of trust involved. From my experience, I haven't been a part of any, especially these political organizations. I haven't been a part of any organization that didn't have some type of infiltrator. And that includes Bernie Sanders movement too, by the way. I haven't been a part of any of them. They're always there. It's like they have nothing better to do. I don't understand it. Let's talk about some of the common characters that you will encounter, obviously infiltrators is one of them, grifters, trolls, sheep herders. Let's get into that. I'm actually just going to open discussion up to the panel, so feel free to jump in.
Well, so we were, I mean, I think we were like chomping at the bit to talk about this as a group.
Yeah.
Because we have, I think, experienced a couple of different kinds of characters that can try to knock you off of your path, right? And so some of the people we wanted to talk about, I mean, we've definitely encountered, I would say the main three would be like a grifter type. So someone who very much misuses funds, and them joining the cause would hinder
and promotes other people misusing funds.
So that kind of person. Another person would be a troll. So someone who's just constantly negative, constantly throwing in kind of questions, not because it's trying to be productive, but trying to throw a wrench into things. And then the third one I would say would be like a sheep herder. So someone who, this is a movement that is not centrally organized. That's what's helping us.
Yeah, we are focusing really on this. I mean, it sounds weird, but we're not an org. Like, we are just a bunch of people, grassroots, trying to get together and like figure things out. And when someone comes in and interjects rigidity to that, and like not in the sense of like, you know, Excel spreadsheets, in the sense of like we have to have rules and we have to do this and that, and start setting up hierarchies and things like that, that's bad news bears from the start. Yeah,
that's right. You have to be really cautious of the people too, that every time you come up with an idea or a suggestion, they're always against it. And so you don't really start moving anywhere. And it's just another attempt to derail. Like, you
Debbie Downers, maybe we'll call them. So that would be another. That's number 4. Debbie Downers, like, oh, that's never going to work. You're never going to be able to pull that off. Like, I mean, let's try it and see what happens. You know?
Yeah, they'll be like, I don't know if everyone's seen those SNL skits with Debbie Downer, but yeah, it's definitely like that character. And I've seen it with the Marches for Medicare for All too last year. Same issues, like, oh, well, what is this going to do? How are you funded? Is this a grift? Like, anything. So always be wary of the people who always come out to attack any type of direct action.
Yeah.
I think there's also the people, I've always had people that want to hop in and then they want to dive into, like, they want to bring like the debates to your Slack or to your workplace or whatever. It's okay to have community conversations. I know I've had them with all you women here before, but you can have organizing spaces sometimes when you're in the middle of doing something and then they'll stop and say, you know, we need to have a massive diatribe about this one policy. Why aren't we talking about this one policy when, you know, you're maybe something that you have a lot of issues? So they'll keep repeating their one policy over and over again in your channels. And you're like, dude, we are talking about Medicare for All today, or we're talking about this event encompasses all these different things. That's one thing that I found. And then eventually, I guess it kind of turns into the sheep herder, because sometimes then those people are like, well, you can go join this organization. And you're like, they got me.
Yeah, I think you also have to be careful of the people who, and I've had this happen with a lot of organizations. They'll say that they're like activist organizations. And then I get into the group and then I realize they're just trying to get people to vote for Democrats. There's a lot of groups that are like that, by the way. They'll say that they're such and such, Boston helps the community group or whatever. But then you get into it and you're like, is this really about helping the community, or is this about getting people to vote for Democrat politicians? So you have to be careful with those too. Quaker?
I would say, if I don't want to go too far off the topic, but we have, you know, just characters in activism where someone is overcommitted, they joined everything, and then they can't actually participate. So is that an infiltrator level, or someone who is, trying to dismantle your group? No, but they are actually taking us down, because if you're overcommitted and not able to actually show up on the different activities, and sometimes we're really flexible, but if someone is trying to do too much but they're not able to, so that's kind of taking our topic off a little bit, but there's different ways that you can show up, and sometimes where you can actually scuttle the project.
Well, I think that actually touches on, someone in the chat said something about talking about activist fatigue. And I think that can also kind of touch or fold into that as well. I think a lot of people who want to get involved tend to overextend themselves. And I think that that's one of the detriments to the left, is we rely too much on the same people, rather than expanding who can be involved. Where, like, when you look at the right, I mean, they have tons of people involved. There are tons of jobs. Like, on the left, it seems like there's a lot more gatekeeping. And quite frankly, we also have the skills. We also have people who want to do stuff. So I think it's, for some reason on the left, though, but however, and this is one of the big differences, is we do not get together socially on the left. We don't get together and have a barbecue. We don't get together at a VFW. We don't get together
It's
and
like
just shoot
only
the
for
breeze.
something like nerdy and academic. And you know what? That's not always the best way to get things done. I think, you
Right.
know?
Sometimes you got to have a beer with somebody and see if you actually vibe.
Right.
And that's a big part of it. And so, I think it's bringing more people into the fold. It's not holding this like gatekeeping kind of space, and understanding that. I mean, it's very interesting. The left constantly talks about working class and all of this stuff, but we are the most gatekeeping of anybody. We have to be academic. You have to be a lawyer. You have to have a PhD. Guess what? I don't. And I haven't read theory either. But I know that of a lot of people who've had YouTube channels for some years now, who have millions of followers, have not brought their people together. So I don't care if I haven't read theory. We're doing what needs to be done. And so I'm sick of the hierarchies. That needs to be called out. A lot of people should be supporting this cause who aren't, who constantly yell and say, get in the streets and start your own stuff. And then when you ask them to get involved, they won't even retweet this. So that's something to think about too.
Look at our retweets.
Had conversations with these people in messages, and they don't seem to think it's a problem. So that's fine. But those people get views, and people who don't, this is like a full-time job. And I just feel like that's part of it. We need to bring more people into it. We have a lot of people who have skills, but we have to expand, and that means letting other people take the floor. And some people aren't comfortable with that. And if you really want change, then you have to get over yourself. Yeah.
Well, thank you so
what
much
about
for bringing that
training?
up.
Oh, sorry, Sabby. I didn't mean to interrupt. I was like, what about training? If somebody has an expertise, like I've trained a bunch of people to do a lot of things I've done without them ever having to go to college for it. And I paid for the college, but I've trained people to do a bunch of the stuff that I've done that I went to college for because there needs to be more people that can do those things. So if there is like an expert or there's why aren't they training and mentoring others? If they're not, and they just want some title or something, I never gave a crap about a title. So if they just want some title or something, to me, that's a big red flag. You're not training, you're not mentoring, you're not doing things. If you are you have expertise in that, that's a little iffy.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, thank you so much for that, Courtney, for that statement, because no, it's true. Like I've been telling you guys this on this show multiple times. The reason why the left is not organized, the reason why we don't get anything done is because there is a lot of gatekeeping on the left. And so you have people that are more concerned about their territorial space and who they're aligned with and who they have on their show, to the point that nothing gets done. So the people who are actually out there putting things together, that are actually being activists and working things and doing things in the community with the people, those people you rarely see on. If you do, you saw them on here, or you saw them on RBN, or you saw them on the Bank Sisters channel, or Lucy has talked to them, or Zainab has talked to them, Quaker has talked to them, Phony has talked to them. You need to hear from working class people. You need to hear from poor people, not people who come from millionaire families or who are millionaires that don't do any activism trying to tell you what to do and lead the way. This needs to be led by people who are working class, people who are poor, people who actually have something to lose. That's the difference. So we have to get out of this gatekeeping mentality. And I don't know why it exists. I think it's more of a personality thing. People care more about a brand than they actually do getting some type of change. And I am not that one. So it is what it is, but you don't see that happening on the right. And I've noticed that as well. Do you think you got people like Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, and all these other people's like on the right? Do you see them gatekeeping each other? No, they work together.
And that's the thing. The mainstream media works with the independent media on the right. So you'll be on Fox News, but also Candace Owens' show, her show looks like late night with Chelsea Handler. It looks like an show.
Yeah, it's like very fancy. She's really come up. But you will see her also go on Fox News and do a segment or go on there. They have a cross thing and we don't have that.
And they also will do live events together as well, where we can't get our politicians who are supposedly progressive to even talk to us. So there's no even comparison. They work together in harmony and they don't put each other down. You know, everybody has their place and their way that they're bringing in other people. And the left, it seems to be a lot of like putting up noses and you don't know this and you don't know this person and you got to pass this test. And guess what? We don't have time for it. So if we're going to be actually doing what we're about, then we need to be actually doing it. And so that's why I think, you know, like something like this camp, it hasn't been done before. And the greatest thing about it is that it's not attached to a politician. It's not attached to a policy. It can't fail. The biggest thing is it's to bring people together who have a want to do something to move forward, you know, and that's positive. It's a net positive.
When you say like it's that we're low goal oriented, our goal is to make community. So if we all just, you know, if just each of, so we have the structure of the camp is that there's like 12 people who put their names in to sign up for camp. So if just those 12 people showed up, we're good. We're all set. We made community. We came together. We're going to be eating together. We're going to be having these deep conversations. We're doing it over campfires. We're doing it as we walk while we make uncomfortable or comfortable, uncomfortable. Like we'll be doing things. And that's sufficient. If all the other people show up, the sky's the limit.
Yeah. And like the nice thing about I guess it's not really a brand or anything, but the Camp Dada idea is that anyone can camp, you know, like anywhere. So if you don't want to join, you can start your own. We still have to see how this one is going to go. Like we still want to raise the $3,000 that we need for this one in order to feed the 50 people that are coming. But after that's over, whoever wants to plan the next Camp Dada should plan their own, you know, and maybe they can use the Discord or, you know, like keep like using the same tools, like maybe the same forum to come together and plan their own on the West Coast or in another part of the country. Yeah.
And there's different ways to do it. You know, if you have a community park, you can pull a permit. Permits are quite cheap. And you pull a permit for just a Saturday and a Sunday and just have everybody show up, you know, have people that are going to skill share, everybody potluck picnic basket. And, you know, like it can be done. It doesn't have to be multi-state bringing in people. It doesn't have to be. We are lifting that up just because our group is multi-state, and so, but we're trying to stay generally in the region. So there's capacity to do this small and still be very successful, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, and like, gosh, what else can we say about this, guys?
I have something to say.
Quaker and I got lost.
Quaker was so dreamy that we got lost in our thoughts. No, I mean, I hope that we can really expand this because, you know, if you've ever been driving and like flipping through the radio channels, like the right has a million different radio stations and they're always talking to each other one way or another, getting in touch with each other. And I think the left is just so insular. Like I myself am not big into Twitter. It's just it's too much. I have too much of a time suck for me. I can't do it. So I think that, you know, and I think that there are a lot of people who are just like out living in their, you know, IRL or whatever, and would agree with us on a lot of things. But if we don't ever get the chance to talk to them or to, you know, have them hear us, you know, in any way.
This can't be a movement in our basement.
Right. Like, it's not gonna work.
Mean, we're in our parents' basement right now, but this is not, that's not gonna, sorry. Okay. I would love to stay at home all day and be agoraphobic. Listen, I don't like people, but guess what? We have to interact with each other to get anything done. And that's like basically what it comes down to, you know?
Yeah, like I'm glad that Camp Dada materialized somehow. I don't even really know how it happened, because like at the time that we were brainstorming this, I was actually like kind of reaching my point of exasperation, like with my little YouTube channel. And part of it is like you would talk about a topic and like somebody would be like, but this, and like, you know, make a whole commentary on a specific policy and why they don't agree with it. And then there would be like a whole conversation. And then I realized, like, at the end of the day, like, you know, I think theory is cool in, you know, to think of, you know, it's good to learn about things and think about things. But at the end of the day, like, if nobody's going to do anything, like I start having lack of patience. I'm like, who cares about this policy point, or if you agree with this economic policy or the other economic policy, or like I did that whole student debt marathon only to have some people be like, well, student debt is not my most important issue. I'm more concerned about this issue. And then somebody else would be like, oh, I'm more concerned about that issue. And I was like, I just like reached like almost about to explode, you know, to the point where I'm like, you do realize none of us are going to get anything we want at all. Like, you know, nothing is going to happen. Absolutely nothing. It doesn't matter if you disagree with your neighbor about, you know, this issue or that issue. Nobody is getting anything they want at all. None of you. So I just kind of like, you know, it's online. So it's like, I can't come forward and like, you know, slap them on the tush or anything, but like I was just getting tired, like an angry mom kind of. So I you know, so I'm glad that this happened, because I feel like we need to, and it doesn't even matter if you're right wing or left wing, it's like nobody's getting anything they really actually want in this country. Like I feel like our living standards are just going down completely, as you know, for all of us. So if we don't find a way to come together, because the negotiation of the policy is what I'm realizing through this is it has to come after we build the relationship with each other. You're bitching on people online. It's like really easy to be nasty online, you know, or like disagree with this or that. And I think it's human nature to do that. But when you have to like face people in person, it's another thing, right? Because like they're there. So, and then you have to be the common point of agreement.
That was something that I was going to touch on, unless Fawny had something to say.
You guys talk about the role. Sorry, I dipped out there. I lost
We just kept talking. Go ahead, Fawny, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, like to dovetail with what you guys were saying. I mean, one of the consistent things I see online on Twitter, especially, is like, have you read enough theory? Have you read enough theory? And this is sort of like, I mean, our goal is to break this, you know, like circular argument. Like, have you read enough theory? Have you read this book? Have you read that book? You know, like it's almost feels like a college course where you need prerequisites in order to enroll. Like, I mean, so I think that's also like the idea that we are challenging head on. Like, you don't need to have, you know, read all of these, you know, literature just to be able to get involved in organizing.
That's another roadblock, by the way, Phony. I really do think some people use that as a roadblock. You know, anything to keep you from like getting started. Like Lucy was talking about, like the student debt summit that they did, and us actually wanting to do something, like anything to prevent you from actually starting the action.
I mean, there's a very vocal faction. There are multiple vocal factions on Twitter that's made it their agenda in life to put down others on the basis that they haven't read enough Marxist theory.
And the thing is, most people who have jobs don't have time to read theory. Sorry, but like when you're waitressing, I mean, so if you have an office job, you can do a lot of like fuck all shit. That's true. You could be on Facebook. When I was a waitress, you barely had time to use the restroom. So no, I didn't have time to like sneak theory into my back pocket and then make sure I'm being the best leftist in the world. You know, I think, yeah, like some of those roadblocks are so ridiculous. But one thing that Lucy was touching on that I think is interesting that we have kind of encountered in our organizing is hearing each other and playing devil's advocate, seeing things from the other side, being empathetic. I think that that's really taken us a long way because we have had people try to infiltrate us. We have had people try to, hey pasta. We have had people try to, I think, like knock us off of our,
we've had to have a lot of really, when you're planning something like this, it's important to trust the people you're planning with. Because we've had to have a lot of like very difficult conversations,
but also not trust the people that you're planning with. I mean, I'm sorry, but like I love y'all, but I will usually be the person who's like, okay, hold on. Okay, if I were the other person, explain to me. I think that's very, very important.
Phony is our receipts person. He's got
and then Phony's got the receipts.
Yeah,
so
that's
important.
That's how we typically go through things. But also, I mean, I'm like so proud of this group for just like not being afraid to talk about issues head on. I mean, we've had quite a few things come up where it's been like, everyone's uncomfortable. But in the end, we're all adults and we have our three focuses, healthcare, climate change, general strike. Those are our three focuses for right now. And we also threw debt strike in there. But that's what we're focused on. And as long as we can agree on those issues, then, that's how we're moving forward. And it's been really just interesting to just talk to each other about I mean, there's been a lot of uncomfortableness and it's just like, it is what it is, I mean, it doesn't mean that I hate you as a person. It doesn't mean that we're not friends. It just means that like, we need to talk about things. And so far so good. Like things have been talked about because and we moved on.
The biggest focus I think has been safety too. So we try to listen to each other. And I think you got to listen to what makes other people comfortable and have those conversations. And that's really made our organizing go a much longer way.
Okay.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say we've been really trying to allow people to have their moments, because each of us have had something really big happening, and so stress happens. So it's just a process, and so I think that that's an additional component to it. So a lot of us are trying to learn. We're trying to catch up on some facts, and in other areas. We really know that topic, and so we're skill sharing in our circle. We're really trying to build community within our space. So even if nobody shows up at Camp Dada, we've been working together, and a whole bunch of people have been spending a lot of time putting this together. So I think it's done in the work. It's done in the process.
Absolutely. I want to go ahead and pull up that site for people to see. Here's the Camp Dada website here. And as you can see, the goal is 13,000. Right now it says 3,111. You can donate using that link at the bottom. It's scrolling across the bottom of the screen. givebutter.com/Camp Dada Fund. So that's why that's scrolling there for you guys. But who wants to talk about the action? One of you guys go ahead and jump on in.
Lucy, you can talk about the action. I just want to say quickly about the fundraiser. So we need like $3,000 more is our goal. We've gotten a lot of donations in campsite donations. Also in actual.
It doesn't show up there.
Yeah, it doesn't show up there. Also in physical donations of like sleeping bags and tents. So
the wish list has been really good, guys. Yes. Thank you so much.
You can also get merchandise and be a part of Camp Dada even if you're not there. And some of that will go also to the camp. So I'll let Lucy.
It's all in the
explain.
give butter stage, but Lucy, go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So the action is basically, it's going to be like over Labor Day weekend. I believe it's almost full. I'm not sure exactly. But again, you know, if you're interested, get in touch. You know, you can help organize one in the future, maybe. But first we have to get through this one. And then we're going to have basically like skill sharing and activities every day. We're not looking to get arrested, but we are looking to kind of basically like take up space in a wealthy area. The idea for doing that, I think we were just like brainstorming, and I was remembering like a friend of mine that that's a contractor in this like wealthy part of New York State. And I was just thinking about the fact that the only access, I'm not talking about just like upper middle class people, but like these billionaires, you know, the only people they see like on a daily basis are like their gardeners and their contractors and the people that, you know, make their sandwiches with their caterers, whatever, right? And basically, like, those people live in their own world. Like, you could go to City Hall and protest every day, and they're never there. The people that are there are, like, you know, government workers, middle-class people, you know, maybe people with middle-class jobs, or, like, you know, MTA workers, etc. But you're not actually, like, bothering those people. So that's kind of, like, what the idea came out of. And you can see that so clearly in like Jill Biden's statement about Hispanics being tacos. It's like, because like in her mind, you know, she just thinks like, these are the people that make my sandwich. You know what I mean? Like, she just has no, so, and I don't think Americans feel that way, because they, you know, wherever they are in the political spectrum, like, they see people, they talk to people every day that, like, they don't just see them as like the people that make their sandwich. So I think like part of it is just taking up space, and that idea grew like people it resonated with people more than I thought it would, because people would, you know, like a lot of people came up with new action ideas. All of them are going to be kind of like artistic actions, because we don't want to do anything like openly confrontational. Because we are going to be in a wealthy area with like a lot of rules. So I don't know how much of them I can reveal, but there's going to be like mirror actions that you can copy. Can I talk about them?
Definitely. Do the debt burning, because we know
that's an easy one.
And we'll release the other ones very soon.
Right.
Okay, the debt burning is an easy one, which is basically just to like burn your debt on social media, and it can be any kind of debt you have, whether it's like student or medical or carceral debt or credit card debt. Basically it's just to kind of create some kind of ice bucket challenge moment that goes viral. So we're going to be doing that, and then we're going to have other actions with mirror actions in your city. So I don't know. I'm really excited about it. People have come up with some really creative ideas. And, you know, I was surprised how much it resonated with people, especially with, like, when they started talking about how they've never been camping because, you know, because they don't have a car, or because, you know, camping used to be like a segregated activity, or, you know, like all of these things that didn't really like
people not allowed.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm learning a lot from people, like, you know, how they feel about like taking over these spaces. Is just like, I didn't think about it that way originally, but it's like, yeah, actually, if you go camp in like a wealthy area or a suburb where people, like, you know, they're not used to seeing different kinds of people in their neighborhood, or they're not used to seeing poor people in their neighborhood, just being there actually and doing something, even if it's not like aggressively protesting, is kind of like a revolutionary action.
Right. No, that's true. I was also going to add that for people who are not familiar, I mean, the Hamptons, there's no working class people living in the Hamptons. There aren't that many black people living in the Hamptons neither, unless you're like P. Diddy. So just by us being there, simply being there, I'll be there as well. That's enough to just stir up people. I did also see there was a direct action that took place in the Hamptons where they blocked off the roads and they tried to block off the airport there as well. I forget the name of the group that did that, but I think that was a housing group. But they created a lot of noise with that. So
yeah, it was New York Communities for Change.
Okay, yeah. So, and you could see the people, like the rich people there, they were bothered. They're like, what is this all about? How dare they block off our roads? Can't get that cappuccino.
Sabby, did you see them ask them about taxes? Phony with receipts again. He shared that with us. And they were like, we believe billionaires pay their fair share of taxes. We don't see any issue with the taxation of billionaires. And they were like, how about how your tax dollars are, spent? Maybe some issue there, but overall, I think our government does pretty good. I was like,
Yep. So definitely, guys, you can donate. Again, that link is at the bottom of the screen, givebutter.com/CampDadaFund. The link, I believe Eric has put that in the chat as well. I've seen it go up a couple of times. So definitely help us get there. We do have to eat. That's the big thing, is like we have to feed everybody. So more funds would greatly be appreciated.
Definitely. And we will be making really awesome content that will come out after the camp. So if you can't come, don't feel like you're missing out, because we're going to really facilitate some great discussions around some campfires that we want to share with everyone, and just all of the other ways that we're bonding together. So definitely. And we wanted to shout out Josana, our sister. Yeah, we also organized with Missing Tonight. But yes, we just wanted to shout out her because she keeps us grounded. And she also is the one who really told us about Dadaism. Right, and the beautiful thing about the word Dada is that you can say it in any language. Anyone can say it, and it means nothing. Okay. And that really, I think, there's no centralized hub of this. It's more just, we want a forward motion on all of these kind of issues.
Yeah, and we're really trying to bring together a lot of different kinds of people. We've got anarchists. We've got people from Occupy Wall Street. We've got Assange people. We've got, regular old socialists. We've got, we're trying to just come together on a couple of central things and, get a forward motion as the left, because I feel like we're really stuck. A lot of us are, physically stuck in our houses, but also just, if you live somewhere and there's no other, people around you who have similar ideas to you, we're trying to give an opportunity to at least be able to talk and commune with some people and think that you're not totally crazy out there. No
That's
shit lives
right.
allowed. That's funny.
I see that. Yeah. I'm really excited for this. Again, I think this is a great idea. This will be the first time, well, with the exception of Quaker, I've met Quaker before in person, but this will be the first time I get to meet the rest of you in person. So should be fun. I know it's gonna be crazy.
So excited. Oh, and somebody mentioned food, not bombs in the comments.
Yes.
I think that was one of campers who's helping us is working with Food Not Bombs. So yeah, if you have other organizations that can help us out, definitely reach out and let us know. But we will help you all also make your own Camp Dadas where you may be, because we want this to spread and, for more of us to be getting together offline.
And enjoy nature.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for coming on to talk about this.
Thank you so much for
Thanks,
having us
Sabby,
so
for
much,
having
Sabby.
us.
Yes.
Thank you, Sabby.
All right.
I'll see you in September.
Oh, I'll see you soon, girl. All right, bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Abby.
All right. Thank you,
Thanks so
Sabby.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Aw. And just like that, the crowd was gone. Yeah, guys, definitely, support if you can, because we really need to eat. Like, seriously, we need to eat. But that's a great action that's happening. I'm super excited about this. I really think we need to be having these discussions. So like Chris had just said, we need to be meeting with each other in person. So this is going to be that moment. We're going to brainstorm, come up with, I guess you would say, some type of strategy and moving forward. Like, where do we go from here, right? So very, very excited to see that. I want to go ahead and do some shout outs really quick. If you haven't had a chance to do so, please respond to that poll. I'll reveal that at the end of the show. Shout out to Aberdeen71 for the super sticker. Thank you so much. Thanks for the super chat, Beffer. Do y'all think it's important to remember counterintelligence program when people are being negative? Yes. Nick has gone over that a lot, actually, on RBN. Just some of the talking points and some of the actions that infiltrators will have that should be a red flag to you. So yes. Thank you for this super chat. Elizabeth Marshall says, thank you. Shout out to the Convo Couches in the house. Thank you for the super chat. Holy smokes. Sabby, Lucy, and the Bank Sisters all in one show. That's a smart loaded piano. Good luck, ladies, with Camp Dada. Thanks so much. And thanks for this super chat as well. It's pasta, by the way. Help Camp Dada, y'all. That's right, guys. Shout out to JB, my comrade from RBN. I can't wait to live stream the event for you. I will be there in spirit. That's right, JB. Shout out to AJF for the super chat. What Camp Dada seems to be about, something I mentioned here before, about untypical large number of non-rich folks at rich folks safe places. Corps, headquarters, banks, rich neighborhoods, just hanging out. That's right. That's right. And Zeneb says, and check out the hashtag Camp Dada to see updates, stories, information, and more. Yes. Follow Camp Dada on Twitter as well. So they'll be keeping that going with updates on there. I'm super excited for this, you guys. I really am. I'm burning up. John to Emily says Sabby is on fire. All right. Okay. So now I want to go into, I have two stories we're going to talk about tonight. And one of them actually leads into the call-in discussion tonight. So let's go ahead and look at that thumbnail, ladies and gents. All right. Tonight, we're going to discuss Glenn Greenwald defends Dave Chappelle. That's an interesting story. And yes, Dave Chappelle seems to be getting heat again. I'm also going to discuss Matt Taibbi Biden issue. That's an interesting discussion. And I really appreciated that conversation because I think it's going to teach me to pay a closer attention to what mainstream media is actually saying, although they're not really saying it. And of course, the activist panel for Camp Dada was just here. Quick shout out to everyone.
All right, I think Sabby has frozen up, so we'll see if we'll get her back on. Let's see, Sabby must be having connection problems. Yes, JB, I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully she comes back. So let's see. Oh, there we go. Okay, drop there. Rescue Sabby. Yeah, we're working on it. And hello to chatters. We got Noli. We got Beverly. Stop trolling us, Sabs. Yeah, she's keeping me on my toes. I freeze. You freeze. Yeah, she was frozen for a minute. Okay, we got a text. Oh, come on, phone. She says, she texted me. The text says, I'll be back. All right, so she's working on it. CIA infiltration, possibly. Notori agrees. Let's see. We got JB. Internet may have dropped. I think that's what's been happening out here. Let's see here. Dada movement has given Sabs a house in the Hamptons. Oh yeah, that's the other thing. We got to blame Putin because everything's Putin's fault, right? So let's see. So if I don't know how long I'm gonna be on here. This is what's crazy. You kind of jump in. Here, performative freeze. And then you got to find something to talk about. Oh, yeah, it's Susan Sarandon's fault, yes. And the chatters, oh, I know what I should be doing here. I should be showing some of our, paid comments on the Rockfins. So let's see what we got there. We have, thanks for this paid comment, tipped comment, we'll call it, from Michael Hostetler on Rockfin. Thanks for that. We also had one from Gene Zybeck. Thanks a lot for that. And we got the one, the only Roger Meadows chiming in here. Let's see what Roger had to say. Thanks for this comment on there, Roger. I know Kentucky is not, and I know Massachusetts is. I think he's talking about ballot initiative states. I don't know what states the other ladies are from, but what better things to organize around but a ballot initiative. Use it to pass state version of Medicare for all, public bank, state and local, which is the best way to build a surplus without raising and creating new taxes. A state agency to help build and proliferate worker co-ops throughout your state. Robust public financing of campaigns, state broadband infrastructure.
Hello? Eric?
Hey, yes.
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, there you go. She's back. I was just reading Roger's latest comment on Rockfin.
Okay, I'm using a mobile hotspot.
Uh-huh.
Got it twice.
Sometimes it helps to put your phone closer to the window, but I don't know if that's worth doing.
I don't have no house at the Hamptons. Okay, thanks so much, Eric.
They might give you a tent at the Hamptons. All right, hopefully this hangs on.
All right. Jeez. All right. Now, back to what I was doing. Patreon. Thank you guys so much for those of you who support me on Patreon. All of their names are listed here. And I do want to shout out a new Sabby patron. Shout out to Jimmy H. Thank you so much. If you want to become a patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabby, Sabsters, Sabinators, and Ultimate. All right. Now, let's go ahead and get into the Matt Taibbi story. I want to go ahead and get started with that. Also, guys, don't forget to please take that poll. I'm really interested to see who you guys think is coming on Monday. Let me go ahead and log back into Taibbi and see. All right. So Matt Taibbi had an interview recently, and this was with RJ Esco. So he has this show called The 0 Hour. And there was something he talked about in this interview in reference to what the media is saying to you about Joe Biden without actually saying it to you. So pay attention to this. I think this was a really good discussion. I'm just going to fast forward here, right about here. Here we go.
Proud of the building.
Did you really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so tell us a little bit about the piece, The New Criminal Analogy, and what caused you to draw this parallel.
So first of all, that the Chandler's course sounds great. That's I wish I could have taken that. I actually years ago was.
Oh, we're going to fast forward a little bit here.
We're always told in school, right? The purpose of the press is to inform the electorate so that they can make knowledgeable decisions about who to vote for president. The logical time to tell the people about any questions about Joe Biden's or anybody's cognitive abilities would be during the election. The fact that we were not only not told, we were actually told that we were bad human beings for having any question about it. You quote a couple, I think Sullenberger, Captain Sullenberger, you mentioned a piece of his, I'd forgotten about it till I read your piece about, yeah, I stutter too, I dare you to quit. It's kind of like you're a piece of crap if you even bring up Joe Biden's stutter. You're the schoolyard bully making fun of the stuttering kid if you question it, when in fact, people who question Joe Biden's cognition, as I did, were not doing so. I didn't question Joe Biden's cognition in 2008. I saw him occasionally stutter, but I actually thought he was smart in terms of, he was fast with a one-liner. His one-liner about Rudy Giuliani, his favorite noun, a verb, and 9/11, a good line, he could deliver a line. I didn't have those problems back then, so I wasn't making fun of a lifelong stutter. I had concerns in 2018. Those were not, 2020. Those were not, stuttering concerns. That was something else. So, but this idea that not only no, he doesn't have a problem, we're not going to report on the non-problem, and if you bring it up as if it is a problem, you're ableist and a bad person.
Let's talk about that for a second. Now, I see some questions in the chat about who this is. So this is RJ Eskow. I hope I'm pronouncing his last name correctly. He actually, excuse me, another hiccup. 1 second. Okay. He actually worked with Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016, if I remember correctly. But RJ, he brings on a lot of people for like these interviews. The point that he's making here in reference to Joe Biden's cognition, this is an important piece because even during the debates, the Democratic primary debates, Joe Biden was having difficulty then. And we pointed it out. I mean, people noticed that this was an issue. However, mainstream media made you feel bad for pointing that out. How dare you point out the fact that Joe Biden seems to be having some type of cognitive decline, that Joe Biden is not answering the debate questions that are being, asked of him. He's just stuttering out, or not stuttering out, but he's blurting out words that really didn't even answer the question. Like that time when he talked about some guy named Corn Pop, or that time when he talked about that kids need to just sit next to the radio and listen to the record player. That had nothing to do with the question that was asked. However, mainstream media framed it in such a way that if you did question Joe Biden's cognition or cognitive, I'm sorry, guys, I'm all over the place tonight because of the Wi-Fi. If you question Joe Biden's cognitive decline, then that meant that you were a bad person. That meant that you were being ageist. Now I'm going to call out the hypocrisy part, because that same mainstream media had no problem calling out Bernie Sanders' health issues. It wasn't considered ageist when they called out Bernie Sanders' health problems. When they pointed to the fact that, Bernie Sanders he's too old. Joe Biden and him were pretty much near the same age. When Bernie Sanders, when he had the heart attack, remember, they said this would be a problem. How is he going to be president of the United States? He's not in good health. Remember that? Bernie's poll numbers actually increased after he had that heart attack. So that scared the media even more. So why was it okay to criticize the health of one politician, but it wasn't okay to criticize the health of another politician? Both of them older men. Because the media had already decided that they wanted Joe Biden to be president of the United States. They had already decided that. And I'm really surprised that more people did not see this hypocrisy when it was actually taking place. I'm like, nobody notices that CNN and MSNBC are saying very negative things about Bernie Sanders' age and his health. But if you say that about Joe Biden, they point fingers at you and say that that's ageist. That's the point that RJ is pointing out. So you have to pay attention to what the media says reading between the lines. And that's what this discussion is about, reading between the lines, not necessarily what they're saying with their mouth, although you should pay attention to that too, but what they're really not saying. Let's go back in.
Is really groupthink, isn't it?
Yeah, it's really creepy, and as you say, it's kind of alien to the news mission. Theoretically, we don't care, whether or not he has what the political import of him, possibly having a cognition issue would be. I think what happened during the campaign, and I know this because I talked to some of the people who were covering him. I followed him for a little while. A lot of us saw him in 2008. We saw the clear difference. As you say, he was quick. He always seemed prescient, although he did sometimes have trouble speaking. Sometimes he would kind of accelerate unnecessarily, or his emotional tenor would be sometimes not match the speech. Like the register would be angry when it was supposed to be inspiring. It would be off somehow. But in 2020, it was a completely different issue. It clearly had to do with things like not being aware where he was, being unable to control impulses like anger with people, forgetting where he was in the middle of a sentence.
Those things happen often during the debate when he was running. And so they started to scale back his press appearances. Did everybody notice that? You didn't see him doing as many interviews after people started pointing that out, that there's something a little bit off here with Joe? They were trying to hide him, but they wanted him to be president. And now some of those same people, now they're like, oh God, Joe Biden is making mistakes during these press conferences. Maybe we might need to replace Joe. He was making mistakes like that when he was running for president, but they still wanted to push him through.
It wasn't a speech issue, although I'm sure that complicated it, right? But I think what a lot of the reporters are saying to each other was, well, if we talk about this, then it's going to hurt his chances against Trump. And part of our mission now is to make sure that Trump doesn't win. So let's sit on this. But what ended up happening, I think that ends up becoming a problem of credibility for the newspaper, which makes it more difficult to report on things and have an impact on the public overall.
That's
right. And I also think it's a dereliction of responsibility. And, just to be clear, in terms of my own, conflict of interest, although it's overstating the case, I worked for Bernie Sanders in 2015, 2016. When issues of his age came up, I gave him a line to use, which he did use, which was, if you have any concerns about my age, questions about my age, come out with me for a day on the campaign trail and see if you can keep up. And I gave him.
And I don't know if anyone has given that advice to Joe Biden in reference to questions about his age coming up. I don't know. Maybe they have, and he's just not listening to them. Don't know. I don't know who's advising Joe before he does these interviews, before he does the press conferences. I don't know. Maybe he just doesn't want to listen. But you heard what RJ just said, the advice that he gave to Bernie Sanders when those questions come up.
In that line, which he used, because I found it hard
true.
to keep up. Yeah, man. Yeah, it definitely was. On the other hand, so, I didn't like it as a campaign staffer when people questioned his age, but on the other hand, legitimate. And in 2020, I didn't work for him, but when he had a heart attack, heart problem, of course, you're going to bring that up. You gotta, it's part of the job. As a journalist. So, but what struck me was, of course, they didn't just conceal this when Biden was facing Trump, and it's wrong even at that point. They concealed it when he was facing Bernie as well.
Right.
Don't you think?
But they didn't, conceal Bernie Sanders' health at all. They really pushed Joe Biden through. You had over 20 something candidates at one point. I remember when they split the debates up into two different parts. 10 one night, 10 another night. I remember that. But they really pushed him through. They knew Joe Biden was not the same as he was like in 2008. They knew that he was experiencing some type of cognitive decline, and they still pushed him through. And you see the mess that we're in now. And some people are still trying to push him through again. They're still saying, oh, we got to vote for him again in 2024. Joe barely knows where he is now. What's going to happen come 2024? It's terrible.
I mean, that's my recollection. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as I talk about in the piece, the same experts who called me, they called me to talk about Trump being mentally unfit during the big push to have Trump removed under the 25th Amendment. You remember there was kind of a media furor about that. Those people didn't, when I called them back, even to consult off the record, like I tried it all different ways to try to get advice on, what are you seeing in Biden? Does he also have a physical impairment issue? They wouldn't comment for the record, wouldn't talk to me. So this was something that it was very much on the QT during the primary and during the general election.
So did you guys hear what Matt Taibbi just said in reference to Joe Biden's, cognitive skills or whatever you want to call it? They didn't want to comment. That's the quiet way of saying it's not good. Sometimes with the media, we have to pay attention to what they're not saying and not always what they are saying. Because in a way, them not even wanting to comment on it, that's saying the quiet part out loud. If he was in great health, why would they withhold that information? You would only withhold it if the news is not good, if he's not in good health, if he is experiencing cognitive decline. Because why would you want to tell that to everybody? Hello, America. Your president is experiencing cognitive decline, but we don't want any progressives to get any type of headway in this political space. So we're going to keep riding on this Joe train because we don't want anybody to primary challenge him from the left. So you're just going to have to be stuck with him again for another 4 years. That's literally what they're saying without saying it. Reading between the lines.
I understand it a little bit more during the general, but even then, I think it's, for a reporter, it's always bad news when you just consciously avoid a story because it ends up coming back to bite you. It's similar to the way reporters non-reported the sort of Hillary's sparse crowds in 2016. Nobody really wanted to talk about it, but it ended up being an issue.
Everybody hear that part? You know who had large turnout at their crowds in 2016? Bernie Sanders did. Hillary Clinton didn't. You didn't hear the media talking about that. Same thing, 2020 with Joe Biden. Joe Biden also did not have large turnout at his events. They didn't want to talk about that. Bernie Sanders came here to Boston at Boston Common. It was over 10,000 people there. 10,000 people were not showing up for Joe Biden. Hell, I don't even know if 1,000 people were showing up for Joe Biden. I'm just going to be real here. I don't even know if it was that many because all the speaking events that I saw, and these were just the ones that I saw, I didn't see that many people in that room. So what does that tell you? They knew from the very beginning, oh, people really may not be feeling him. How can we make it work? How can we change people's minds? At one point, they started to lean towards Kamala Harris. Then they realized she wasn't even liked in her own state. Then they started leaning towards Pete Buttigieg, and they said he could be the one. He's the chosen one now. He checks off all the boxes. Let's go ahead and push him. Then they realized that Pete wasn't too popular with black people. And Democrats can't win without the black vote. So then they had to circle back to Joe Biden. That's what happened. And they called in all the stops, everybody. We got to make this work somehow. Clyburn, say something. Obama, pick up the phone. Get some of them to drop out. That's how it worked. It's a damn shame. You should never have to do that much work for someone to win. That's how terrible of a candidate Joe Biden was.
You know, and a signal that there was, you know, real trouble ahead.
Yeah, Matt Taibbi, you got a little ahead of your interviewer there. I was going to bring up those psychiatrists. I found it fascinating because I had a little bit of problem. I mean, I'm not a doctor or psychiatrist. I'm not really super familiar with the professional ethics, but I read them when people started diagnosing Trump at a distance. I remember when people were diagnosing Nixon at a distance, and it seemed to me to be a violation of professional ethics. But a lot of people.
Wait, Nixon? How old is RJ? RJ doesn't look that old, but he said he remembers when this was happening to Nixon. So, I'm gonna have to look that up.
Were eager to do it. Mary Trump, his niece, who was in that field, I think she's a psychologist, if I recall correctly. She was eager to do it, where she not only, she had a personal relationship, so it's a kind of double violation of ethics, but a lot of people were eager to do it. It struck me that if it was legitimate for Trump, it was, if anything, much more so legitimate looking at Biden just from a distance, as we all are, reminded me of the old Henny Youngman joke. Henny Youngman, there are no new Henny Youngman jokes, I acknowledge that, but
that's a good point.
Henny Youngman had a joke about going to the racetrack where he said, some people bet their horse to win, some people bet their horse to show. I should have bet that horse to live. And I hate to say it, but, wanting Biden to beat Trump, that's kind of how I felt about him at certain points during the.
You said RJ's got to be in his 70s? Really? Wow. Okay, I didn't realize.
I should be betting him to live, but I was very worried about his health, physical and mental, during that race. He seems to be holding up okay, and I'm happy for that. I will, on a personal level, I wish him the best. But it certainly seems to me, if you're a psychiatrist like the ones you've contacted that demurred from even saying anything in private, I don't get where their ethics are. Because if you're willing to pronounce on the mental health of Donald Trump, who seems, if anything, more able to construct a coherent, if horrific sentence, why can't you at least off the record say what, offer an interpretation? The only thing I can take away from that is
because they don't have any ethics, RJ. That's the thing. They don't really have ethics. They're supposed to. It's supposed to be ethical journalism, but that's my take on that. But he brings up a good point. If you're willing to do it with Trump, you should be willing to do it with Joe Biden as well, ethically speaking. But we have biased news.
That as a psychiatrist, you're a Biden supporter and you have genuine concerns. But I don't know. How do you read that? It seems unethical.
Yeah, that was one of the first moments for me where I realized that the media environment had changed to a point where I was going to have a problem going forward because, just the way we report the news now is just different. And it's even reached sources who are thinking about the political impact of what they say over just giving you the information, even off the record, which is just so different from the way I'm used to operating. Reporters are going along with it too. It's what's so interesting about this recent flood of stories in the Times also is, again, what are they really telling you by the sudden appearance of all these stories about Biden's health? Well, they're telling you that there's been a big shift somewhere in the Democratic Party, that people are thinking differently in terms of strategy about 2024. We don't think he can do it. We're going to maybe have somebody like Gavin Newsom or J.B. Pritzker step in. Like, they actually explicitly talked about that in the Washington Post.
Listen to what he says here. This is important. Again, he's saying you have to ask yourself, what exactly are they really telling you? What are they really saying? Listen.
I don't know. How do you read that? It seems unethical.
Yeah, that was one of the first moments for me where I realized that the media environment had changed to a point where I was going to have a problem going forward, because, just the way we report the news now is just different. And it's even reached sources who are thinking about the political impact of what they say over just giving you the information, even off the record, which is just so different from the way I'm used to operating. And reporters are going along with it too. Like, now, it's what's so interesting about this recent flood of stories in the Times also is, again, what are they really telling you by the sudden appearance of all these stories about Biden's health? Well,
what are they really telling you? Listen to this.
They're telling you that there's been a big shift somewhere in the Democratic Party, that people are thinking differently in terms of strategy about 2024. We don't think he can do it. We're going to maybe have somebody like Gavin Newsom or J.B. Pritzker step in. Like, they actually explicitly talked about that in the Washington Post. But so they're clearly having those conversations with the reporters, but the reporters aren't reporting that.
Did you hear that? They're having those conversations with the reporters, but the reporters aren't reporting it. They're working together here. I mean, is that ethical journalism? No, it's not. They're giving you information, but you got to hide the story because they don't want it to affect Joe Biden politically. This is why I tell people half of what I read and half of what I watch in reference to mainstream media, half of it most of the time is false. Half of the time you're not getting the full story. You're just getting the story that they want you to hear. What about the stories that you don't get to hear about? What about the stories they're not telling you? Who's reporting on those stories? That's when people turn to, a lot of times, independent media. This is the problem. You got to call it out.
They're doing is they're reporting the phony narrative, like, suddenly we're gonna decide now that it's okay to talk about Biden's health, and that's essentially what those news stories, what their function was publicly.
And now it's okay to talk about Joe Biden's health because, like he told you, they've already decided there's this shift in the Democratic Party that, hey, we might need to put someone in Joe's spot. So now it's okay to talk about Joe Biden's health. It wasn't okay to talk about it when we saw these signs from Joe Biden during the 2020 primary, though.
Which is very Soviet, right? It's like you're allowed to talk about this now, right? And they've done this with a number of different issues. Some of them on, like, more the social justice track recently, where they did a gigantic deep dive into the trans healthcare for kids, where they expounded on issues that had been completely taboo in their pages for a long time. So that's really what they're telling you. They're telling you more when it's okay to talk about something, as opposed to what the actual information is, which is just a very strange way to think about the news.
So that's what's happening. Mainstream media, this is what they're doing. It's frustrating. It's so frustrating. There are so many stories out there that just don't get to see the light of day because somebody above at the top has decided it's not okay to talk about that issue right now. This is why I tell people sometimes when it comes to mainstream media, by the time the news gets to us with some issues, some stories, the story had already been 6 months, 1 year old. There had already been stories about the issue, but it wasn't okay to talk about it back then. It wasn't approved, not that subject matter. So what are we really getting? It's really frustrating. It's really frustrating that people can just sit back and decide what you can talk about and what you can't talk about, because now's not the right time. I'll give you an example with policing as well. I think, Matt, I'm going to end this right here because that's the part when he's saying, one more part. With policing, you know, I've heard a lot of people in media criticizing defund the police. That was a stupid idea. Who came up with that strategy? That's ruined the Democratic Party. Rah. But after the school shooting at Uvalde, Texas, at Robb Elementary School, all of a sudden, some of those same commentators are now saying, oh, well, maybe we should defund the police because they had all of these resources. They had a lot of officers present. You know, that story is changing every day, by the way. They have a lot of officers present. Not only that, they also had shields. I showed you guys this. They had shields that could protect them as well. Maybe we should, because they're not actually doing their job. And they allowed those children to be killed. Now, all of a sudden, it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to talk about it in a positive way because someone already said, green light, give the go signal. Now it's okay. You see how it works? I'll let him finish up here.
You and I both grew up in a completely different environment, right? So
Yeah.
it's very odd.
It really is. And I guess, you know, in trying to parse and in reading your piece, at first with this Biden coverage, you know, my initial reaction was, well, maybe there's just blood in the water, right? You know, his poll numbers are so bad. And, you know, majority of Democrats want him out, that maybe they just smell blood in the water. So now it's time to do the you know, get rid of Joe stories that they couldn't do before. But you convinced me, you know, with the, first of all, with these anonymous sources talking about J.B. Pritzker, God, who, you know, they're throwing that guy out. It blows my mind. But him and Newsom and all that, just kind of trial balloon names being put out there. Michelle Goldberg's Joe Biden is too old to be president. And it does have the feeling of a coordinated campaign. Then you pivot to, and I did want to talk about this, you know, you say, I love this line, this sentence, is half a sentence actually. What we've got is a newspaper that catches real history spasmodically and often years late, but has the accuracy of an atomic clock when it comes to recording the shifting attitudes of elite opinion. Yeah, that's very true. Public often learns about key facts, pressing international controversies, or trends in American thoughts only once these are deemed suitable for public consumption. Hunter
That's
Biden.
right.
Yeah, I mean, you have to almost read backwards from the stories they print to learn that it's finally been acknowledged 2 years later that really was Hunter Biden's laptop.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and come out there, but you can watch the full interview on RJ Escal 0 Hour. You can watch the full interview there. But yeah, basically they decide whether or not it's okay to talk about something. And if it's okay to talk about that issue, then you can talk about it. How is that, any type of different from censorship? How is that different? They decide, is it okay for the public to hear about this yet? Okay, it's okay for the public to hear about it now. Let's go ahead and talk about it. That's terrible. This is why I tell people you have to do your own research. This is exactly why. Gonna go to some of the comments here. Johnny said, that's why I watch it, because it's what they are conditioning the general population to believe. You have to know what they're saying to people. That's a good point. Deborah said, I wonder who Obama will run interference for in 2024. Oh boy, that should be interesting. Black Queer Socialista, aren't they gonna run Gavin this time? That's what it looks like. Joe OWS, Hate Inc. is an excellent book by Matt Taibbi. Check it out if you get a chance sometime. And Joy says Biden was pushed on us, and then for a cherry on top, they gifted us Kamala Harris. LOL. I hear you there, Joy. I hear you with that one. Okay. Tonight's final story. This is going to lead into the call-in discussion tonight. We have to talk about what just happened to Dave Chappelle. For those who are not aware, Dave Chappelle had a show scheduled at a venue called First Avenue in Minneapolis, Minnesota. That day, hours before the event, they canceled the show. Now, there's an article I want to read in reference to this. Glenn Greenwald had some things to say as well. But first, let me go ahead and play this clip from CNN where they actually talk to an activist that talks about Dave Chappelle's jokes about transgender people, because that's actually where this is coming from. That's why the show was canceled there. However, another venue did pick up the show and it's still sold out. So, I mean, Dave kind of won here. But I do want to hear, I want you guys to hear this, and I want to get your opinions about this tonight on Call In, because I think if you're a comedian in this country right now, during these kind of times, it's like, I feel like it's getting to the point where comedians have to self-censor. And I did not grow up with that type of comedy. Now, granted, when I was a kid, there were certain comedians my parents would not let me watch. Like, for example, I could not watch Andrew Dice Clay. As I got older, I understood why they wouldn't let me see that at a young age. But that being said, you know, I think about some of the comedians that we had when I was growing up, like Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy's Raw. I mean, could you say the things that Eddie Murphy said back then today? Like, as a comedian, you know, you think about people like Red Fox. You think about George Carlin. Would they be able to make those same jokes today? Let's go ahead and listen to this video first. Let's get into that.
Cancel J.K. Rowling. My God, J.K. Rowling wrote all the...
Whoops, hold on. I can't play that part because that'll be copyright. So let me fast forward a little bit here.
Happening during this last historic year of anti-transgender legislation, introduced at least in 33 states, less than a year after a record high number of transgender people, most of them trans women of color, were killed. So what did you think? And you have to keep in mind, he is a comedian, right? But what did you think when you heard this?
Well, when I watched the special, I felt kind of disheartened that he was continuing this attack on the trans community. Now, I think we love to say, oh, comedians are just telling jokes, like that's what they do. But I think it ignores the fact that they have platforms, and those platforms, the rhetoric that they espouse has real world consequences for a lot of cisgender straight people who don't know trans people in their everyday life. Their first interaction with trans people is through the media. It's through what they watch, through what they read. And so the only things that they hear are these constant misconceptions about our experiences, demonizing words about who we are, saying that we're not women, if we're trans women, saying that trans men are not men, and on, then they're going to actually bring that into their everyday lives. And that's why we see high rates of violence. At least 38 trans and gender nonconforming folks have been murdered this year. We will continue to see more pieces of legislation put forth that actually impact young trans people. And
so what I'm gathering from her it seems like so far she doesn't feel that he should be given a platform at all. And I disagree with that. Now, granted, I'm not trans. I don't know what that's like. I can only imagine what they may have to go through and deal with. There's a lot of ignorance in this country. Let's be real. But does that mean that Dave Chappelle shouldn't have a platform at all? Let's talk about this for a second. Does this mean, First Avenue, the venue that decided to cancel the show hours before, does this mean, I don't know, is this some type of precedent? Are more venues going to do this? If they get pushback from the activist community, are they going to cancel people's shows like hours before? Who decides what's acceptable for a comedian to say and what's not acceptable anymore? Because here's the way that I kind of look at it. If you don't want to hear what Dave Chappelle has to say, fine, have at it. Don't go to the show. Don't watch his material. You don't have to watch it. This was something I never understood. It's just like, if it bothers you that much, if you don't like what they're saying, then just don't watch it. But I think we have to be really careful if we're getting to that point where now comedians have to self-censor. And I've heard comedians say some interesting things. Now, I did see the Chappelle special, the one that they're referring to. I've heard comedians say a lot worse things. And this is not me trying to be insensitive towards the trans community at all. But I think we need to talk about the censorship here, because I feel like we're starting to walk a fine line, and Sabby don't like line. Sabby does not like line, because then what's next? What can't you talk about then? Let's go on. Let's continue.
And so I think that's also the other thing too, is that people get so fixated on the adjective of trans, right? The trans part of it, but we are human. And I think that Chappelle did a sloppy job of speaking to our humanity.
Yeah, there's a part in there where he talks about his friend, right? And he said, his friend said, I'm not asking you to understand, I'm just asking you to listen, and I'm telling you that I'm having this experience and that I'm a human being. So is there any part that is redemptive in there, or is there anything you would like to, if you had a discussion with Chappelle, what would you say to him?
Well, I think what's unfortunate is that he has not really grappled with the fact that as a Black, cisgender, straight man, he could have easily used his platform to talk about the tensions that exist within our own community as Black folks, right?
But he does do that. But Dave Chappelle does talk about those things. Can I just say this? As someone who hosts a show, you wouldn't believe the number of times people contact me and say, why didn't you talk about this issue? Why don't you talk about that? Why didn't you speak to this person? Why don't you bring this person on your show? You wouldn't believe the number of times people tell me that. And here's the thing. There are a lot of news stories, a lot. Most of the time, I'm picking from maybe 6 or 10 a day and narrowing it down to like 3, sometimes 4. You can't cover everything all the time. You can't bring everybody on. Some people don't want to come on. Some people only go onto large platforms. So it's like, when I hear her say that he should be using his platform to talk about the issues that we go through in the Black community, I'm sorry, but I've seen Dave Chappelle do that. At the same time, is it really our place to tell him how to use his platform and what he should or shouldn't say? This is the thing. There's so many issues, right? You can't cover every single issue every time you have a show. Sorry, but I had to say that. I had to say it.
I think that there's a way that he and other Black cisgender straight comedians kind of gloss over the fact that Black LGBTQ plus folks exist. And so it's easy for him to paint the LGBTQ plus community as purely just a white community. You know, there are all these ideas that queerness and transness, all these different things are white inventions. And that's just not true. Black LGBTQ plus folks have always existed. And I really wish he didn't spend so much time only focusing on the fact that there are white people within our community, because it lets him get off the hook. He doesn't have to hold himself accountable for the transphobia and homophobia that exists within our own community.
Okay, let's come out. You know, I think that someone like Dave Chappelle, I could have sworn I've heard him say this multiple times, that he's not transphobic. And it's really interesting to me too. I can't believe this is still going on, because this started last year. But it's interesting to me. I feel like all of a sudden, no one remembers Chappelle's show. Those of you in the chat, raise your hand if you remember Chappelle's show. Do you remember some of the topics that were discussed on that show? Do you think Dave Chappelle will be able to talk about those today? People act like this is the first time Dave Chappelle has said something that they consider to be outrageous or offensive. Did you not watch Chappelle's show? I'm sorry, but listen, there was a skit. I still remember this. Dave Chappelle had a skit where he was a Black guy who was a Klansman. Raise your hand if you remember that skit. Think about some of the things that we're talking about. I remember he had a skit where there was a white family and they had their last name was the N-word. Raise your hand if you remember that skit. So that's why, to me, it's just like, it's coming out of, where is this coming from? People were acting like this is the first time they've heard Dave Chappelle say something that they consider to be outrageous or whatever. It's not. Go watch Chappelle's show. He made fun of everybody. Everyone. He made fun of Prince. Remember? He made fun of Rick James. How Rick James came on and made fun of himself. So it's just, could you do that today? I don't know. I think if that show came out today, I don't know. So I don't know why all of a sudden people just seem to forget that. It's really weird to me. It's weird. I'm like, how do I get out of this thing here? Oh, hold on. It's just strange to me. That's why sometimes I feel like, am I the only one that watched Chappelle's show? Come on, man. Come on, man. No. Now, let's go ahead and get into a little bit more details about what happened, and then I'm going to show you what Glenn Greenwald had to say about all of this. Thank you so much for this, Francesco. Sabby, First Avenue is not just some nightclub. It's where Prince and The Time developed their music and their performance skills. They also filmed Purple Rain there. I thought it sounded familiar. Thank you so much, Francisco. I'm a huge Prince fan, so. Notori said Dave is a damn comedian, and that trans woman is being used by the media, and she is letting them. Ooh. Eric said comedians are effectively social commentators, and when they are being censored, we have truly entered dangerous territory. Yeah, we really have. I remember when Dave Chappelle did that comedy skit, I think this was a couple years ago, maybe 2 years ago, where he was sitting outside. It was at his house, and he invited people to come to the comedy show just outside at his house. It was 8 minutes and 34 seconds, I think. And he was talking about George Floyd and stuff like that. But he said a joke about Candace Owens that, honestly, where was the outrage with that? He said that Candace Owens, her face looks like her, I'll say this the right way. He said her face looks like her vajayjay smells. He didn't say it that way though. He said it a different way. He said it in a different way. But I'm just saying, they act like this is the first. I don't know. So this is what happened. Dave Chappelle has the last laugh. So listen to this. I don't know why. Oh, that's on 200. Yikes. Weird. Why is it the text? So, okay, there we go. All right. So this is what happened, ladies and gentlemen. Dave Chappelle laughed off the fiasco that forced a Minneapolis venue to cancel him at the 11th hour last night and surrender to a woke mob, calling his critics a small group of transgender lunatics and slamming the venue for not having more courage. Chappelle, 48, had been slated to play a sold-out show at First Avenue, a venue in Minneapolis. Tickets started at $129.50, and the venue had sold 1,500, bringing in nearly $200,000 of sales. However, hours before the show, First Avenue announced it was no longer willing to host. Their about turn came as the result of a change.org petition signed by 125 people who complained Chappelle was transphobic and staff members who refused to turn up to the man the event. So this is apparently what it took, guys, 125 signatures for them to change their mind and say, yeah, we're not going to put on that show here. That's it. 125. That's it. I've seen those petitions go around multiple times via email for different issues. So it says it was quickly moved to the nearby Varsity Theater and went ahead uninterrupted. During the show, Chappelle said he was disappointed that the First Avenue hadn't shown more stealth against the woke mob. He also laughed off that transgender activists who protested outside, calling them lunatics. So this is where the show ended up taking place, at Varsity, and it sold out. All 3 nights. There's the people in line. The lines were out the door. So essentially, I mean, where do you draw the line? Again, I feel like they basically, First Avenue just gave that money over to Varsity. I'm really worried about the censorship, you guys. I really am. Like, if comedians can't joke around, if they can't, I don't know. Where are we headed? Now, Glenn Greenwald, he had some things to say about this. So listen to this. This theater in Minneapolis booked and promoted a live show by Dave Chappelle. Activists objected, demanding they cancel it because the show harms them and puts them in danger. The theater capitulated and apologized for the harm. The show will now be in a different theater. And I'll come back to this in just a second. Glenn goes on to say, in the 1980s, it was the moral majority and social conservatives on the right who routinely objected to shows by artists and comedians, demanding that the shows be canceled or banned on the ground that they cause harm to the community. Now it's the left that does this. See what I was telling you about the left and like liberals wanting to censor people now? He goes on to say here, within the framework of liberal culture, it is difficult to avoid observing that Chappelle protests like the one in Minneapolis entail overwhelmingly white liberal activists trying to silence one of history's most brilliant and successful Black comedians. So according to Glenn Greenwald, he's saying most of the activists are white liberal activists. So let's go back and see what First Avenue said. Now, they did post this on Twitter, and it says here, "We hear you. Tonight's show has been canceled at First Avenue and is moving to Varsity Theater. See our full statement for more. The Dave Chappelle show at First Avenue has been canceled and is moving to Varsity Theater. To staff, artists in our community, we hear you and we are sorry. We know we must hold ourselves to the highest standards, and we know we let you down. We are not just a black box with people in it. And we understood that First Avenue is not just a room, but meaningful beyond our walls. The First Avenue team and you have worked hard to make our venues the safest spaces in the country, and we will continue with that mission. We believe in diverse voices and the freedom of artistic expression." What? Okay. Dave Chappelle is a diverse voice. He's an artist. Okay. But in honoring that, we lost sight of the impact this would have. We know there are some of you who will not agree with this decision. You are welcome to send feedback. If you're a ticket holder, look for an email with information on your ticket transferring the show at Varsity Theater. It's really interesting to me because, again, as someone mentioned in the chat, this is where, Prince performed, the time. Prince had jeans, well, maybe not jeans. Prince had pants with his butt out, his butt cheeks out. And that was back in the 80s. It's 2022. We're going backwards. I tell you, what can I say? So that happened. And this one right here was gold. Thank you for this, Tim. We believe in diverse voices, except the voices we don't agree with. And drop the mic. Because that's essentially what they're doing. We're going to talk about this tonight, guys, because I do want to hear from you. I want to hear your opinion about this. When does it end? When is it enough? Like, what is supposed to happen here? What are we supposed to do? What are comedians supposed to do? I don't know. I'm going to go to some of these comments here, and then I'm going to reveal the results of that poll. I'm going to take a quick 10-minute break. I'll come back. We'll get started with the call-in. You guys know how I do this on Fridays. I don't know why I have to say this anymore. Thanks for the super chat, Beffer. Weird how CNN never finds any pro-speech trans people like me. That's a good point. Thanks for the super chat, Roger Meadows. Clayton Bigsby. That's right. That skit, Chappelle. Thanks for the super chat, AJF. In order to shake the psyche of the Dems mindset, the Dems need to be losing in places they are expected to win and also have independents, third parties spoil the MFers' fun. That's interesting. Thanks for this super chat as well, AJF. Leaning in that G. Newsom running for Dems prez. Yeah, I talked about it last night. I think that's what's going to happen. I really do. Okay. Now, guys, let's look at those poll results. Return of the Mac. All right. So, guys, I told you I have a special guest coming on Monday. I didn't tell you who it was. It's a surprise guest, but I'm curious to see what you guys had to say. So the question was, Sabby has a surprise guest Monday afternoon. Who is it? 39% said Glenn Greenwald. 39% also said Ralph Nader. 4% said Ro Khanna. 18% said Jill Stein. Well, That is very interesting. Well, for those of you guys are not going to believe this. For those of you that were a part of that 4%, congratulations. You win. So my special guest Monday is going to be Ro Khanna. I have a lot of questions for him, a lot to ask. So it is Ro Khanna. That's interesting. I thought more people would have picked that one. I'm sorry, guys. No, I haven't not gotten Ralph Nader yet. I am so sorry. So I do have a lot to talk to him about, especially in reference to inflation, in reference to where our money is going instead of going to us, not coming to the American people. I have a lot to ask. So buckle up and get ready for that. This will be recorded because it's actually going to be in the morning when I record it. And then I will upload it as a premiere Monday afternoon. I'll probably premiere it around 3:30 or 4. And then I'll have my regular live stream that night. So should be interesting. Should be interesting. Now, I am going to take a quick break. I'll come back, close it out, and then we can get into that call-in discussion. So off I go.
Then I'd better come on. Let's see. All right. Now, Sabby's having a little break, and then we'll do the call-in. I put the call-in link in the chat. You can keep spamming the chat with that. Yeah, Ro Khanna. I didn't see that one coming either. No, it's not going to be live. I guess I think the time when it was being done was in the morning. So I think that's why, or at least morning Eastern time. I guess it'd be early morning his time. But yeah, that'll be interesting. So what is the call-in topic tonight? The call-in topic tonight is Dave Chappelle, and about what do people think about the whole Chappelle saga. And what was this one here? Yeah, Sabby will stick it to Ro, I hope. We'll see. That's going to be interesting. I always remember Max Blumenthal really exposed Ro just by pushing him with a few questions. So we'll see. And thanks for this super chat, AJF Milan. With propaganda, it also involves not telling or discussing relevant info, like when the main media barely discuss the Ukrainian civil war. Yeah, there's certainly a long list of things that you could put in that category of lies of omission, shall we say, in a way to put it. So, yeah, with the Chappelle, one thing I noticed, did you see his ticket prices? Man, like starting at $129. It's like, yikes. I mean, I think poor people should be mad at Chappelle because, oh man, and that's like the lowest price ticket. But I don't know, maybe that's just what it costs now. But yeah, I'll give my little bit of 2 cents here, in that if people are gonna criticize Chappelle, I think they should be very specific. You should be very, show the quote, or talk about the quote. What exactly did he say? What was wrong with it? And all that kind of thing. There's so much of this criticism that's this kind of meta stuff of, always this or always that or always should have said this. And, there's this whole thing of danger and unsafe. And I wish people would talk more about the danger from the billionaires, from the megacorps is what you want to, what we should be talking about, what we feel, puts us in danger. And I saw, where was this good comment here? Here it is. Yes, class war. And Kitty, thanks. Yeah, class war, that's what I care about. And strong agree on that one. Whoops, didn't mean to show that one. And let's see. Yeah, and it all plays into this thing where they want to talk about anything but the money. And so, yeah, they'll talk about race issues. They'll even talk about the cops. And of course, they'll talk about, trans issues. And all these can be important issues and should be talked about and hashed out in an honest way. But why aren't we talking about, how the rich are getting richer than they've ever been? The wealth inequality is it's huge. And that's what's killing us all. And the other problem with this whole canceling thing or censoring them thing is no one who's in favor of it or really questioning these people ever seems to ask, well, who gets to decide who does the censoring and who does the canceling? That's always the core issue with censorship is who decides. It's kind of a big problem because who decides right now in our society, in our economy, is the billionaires, and everybody with the money. All right, here's a super chat popping up. Thanks for this from Jewel in the Machine. Greetings from, I think that's Minneapolis, St. Paul, MPLS area, where venues don't like and won't book Jimmy Dore, and legend Chappelle gets booted from the venue popularized by Prince and the scene of the counterculture of my youth. Yes, thanks for that, Jewel, and good points there. Let's see. This comment looks pretty good from JP. I'd prefer to have dangerous freedom than have peaceful slavery. And yes, focus on those class issues. Definitely, that's the thing. Oh yeah, and then this one, yeah. Ask Ro about who funds him. That'll be interesting. We'll see if Sabby pulls up some of those receipts. Is Ro gonna call her a Russian like he did for Max, or at least maybe tweet out that she is and then delete the tweet like he did. And let's see, while I'm up here, I wanted to highlight one other one thing that I read here just recently, the latest from our favorite Caitlin Johnstone. She was talking about challenges to transcend our evolutionary ape heritage, and she talks about how we have kind of this evolutionary heritage from chimpanzees, where they tend to hunt things down to extinction and fight in war, and so I definitely recommend reading that one. And she ends on a hopeful note, which she usually does. So with that quick plug, if our Sabby Sabs is ready.
Yeah, let's head on over to call-in. So guys, I put the link to the call-in segment in the chat. It's pinned to the top of that live chat.
Just before you jump in, you had a couple of things for the Roe interview. They're saying ask about Palestine. Ask about his wife's stock portfolio, and there was another one, ask where he gets his money. So there you go.
I have a whole list, you guys.
All
I
right.
have a whole list.
See you all over on Call-In. Bye.
All right, I am going to go ahead and head out and get that room started. Well, let me go ahead and go live on Call-In. Start the room. Again, links in the chat, guys. Let's get it started. And I will share this on Twitter as well. Doobie doobie doo. Right. And I can go ahead and I'm going to add it to that group as well. Yeah, should be an interesting conversation, you guys. Like I said, I have a lot of questions. So let's get into that. All right. All right, guys. Call-in room is now open. Go ahead and click on that link. I'm heading out of here. You guys have a great weekend. Have a good night. Doop, 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 doop. Keep up the fight.